From a very early age, we soon learn to sort things out. David has sorted his food into 2 sets. Food he doesn't like, and food he does. Jacob is sorting out the items in his building kit according to their colour.
Yellow bit, yellow bit there.
Like Mandy, you probably had to sort out the cutlery. Forks, knives, spoons. How would you sort out these different vehicles? If you were doing a survey, you might decide in just 3 groups: cars, buses, and lorries. You'd be making a classification. If you wanted, you could subdivide the buses, say, perhaps by their route numbers. These classify the buses according to where they're going, their destination. In a supermarket, there's a lot of classification. Take beans, for instance. Where would you look for beans? And which sort of beans does Mum want? Better play safe. Get some of each kind. You might think that all the beans would be together in one place, but they're actually in at least 4 quite separate places. Fresh green beans are with all the other fresh vegetables, but frozen beans are in the frozen food section, along with other frozen vegetables. And tinned beans are in a different section, with the other tinned foods. Tinned green beans are with tins of other green vegetables, but baked beans are over here. And if you want dried beans, the organisation of the beans and other foods, fresh, frozen, tinned, dried, is for convenience. The convenience of the people who run the supermarket and the convenience of the customers. Once you know the system, it's very easy to find everything you want.
2116, please.
All too easy, perhaps. But the supermarket arrangement doesn't tell us what beans really are. They started as part of a living plant. Soya beans from the USA. From France, haricots verts. In this part of India, they call them lobia. In Ghana, they're known as edua. In most cases, the beans we eat are the seeds of the plant. Take baked beans, for instance. If you remove the toast and the sauce, they look like this. And before they're baked, each bean looks like this. The grower calls it a kidney bean. And there are lots of other bean seeds, all from different plants. For instance, these runner bean seeds. All these kidney bean seeds come from the same special type of plant. The scientist calls it the same species. But if you want to classify a plant properly, you also need to study its leaves and flowers, the whole plant, in fact. This plant was collected in 1964 in Tanganyika, now called Tanzania. Its seeds are contained in a pod, and it belongs to a very large family of plants, which scientists call legumes, or leguminosae. But because it only has 3 leaflets, and because it has flowers like pea or bean plants, and for other reasons, it belongs to a smaller grouping, or genus, called Phaseolus. And because it's got seeds like the ones we saw earlier, it's an example of the particular species we call the kidney bean, and scientists call Phaseolus vulgaris. Each sheet in this folder contains a different specimen. These are all specimens of the same species. Notice the flowers, almost white in colour. But on the next sheet, red flowers. And you'd be correct if you've guessed that we've got a different species. In fact, this is a runner bean plant. The whole folder contains about 30 specimens, covering about 3 different species. This cupboard contains about 500 specimens, all in the genus Phaseolus. This bay contains about 10,000 specimens of about 300 different species, divided into about 20 different genera. Genera means more than one genus. Every folder, in every cupboard, in every one of the bays on this floor and half of the next floor, contains specimens of legumes. There are about 17,500 different species of legume, including about 250 different species of beans alone. This gallery contains most of them. In fact, this area, together with 3 others like it, contains the largest number of species of plants in the whole world. It's part of the herbarium at the Royal Botanical Gardens, Kew, in Surrey, near London. People send specimens of plants here from all over the world to be identified and named, to be classified. But classification is not just a question of naming things. Before you can give a name to a plant or an animal, you have to be certain that everyone agrees on what it is. You may not know that this particular creature is called Carassius auratus, but it's definitely a fish. Fish come in many different shapes and sizes. This shark is about 5,000 times the size of the goldfish. But, like the goldfish, it has a tail and fins. It lives underwater, and we still classify it as a fish. How about this whale? It seems to be a fish. Like the shark and the goldfish, it swims underwater. Like the shark, it's got eyes and a broad tail. But scientists don't classify it as a fish. It's a mammal, like us. But human beings look nothing like whales, so why are we classified as mammals? To put it another way, why do scientists classify whales as having more in common with human beings than they do with fish? Animals are classified into 2 main groups: those with backbones, the vertebrates, and those without, the invertebrates. The vertebrates divide further into birds, reptiles, amphibians, fishes, and mammals. The mammals include whales and dolphins, although most mammals are land-based animals, including human beings. So what do all mammals have in common? Several things, but the most important ones are that we are warm-blooded, and so are whales and dolphins. Like human beings, the dolphin gives birth to live young. That's it. And there's the afterbirth. Fish, on the other hand, are cold-blooded. And lay eggs. The characteristics we share with whales are generally regarded as more important than the fact that whales live in water and have adapted to their chilly environment. Scientists describe people and whales as mammals. A rainbow as seen by the camera. But have you ever tried to paint a picture of a rainbow? Every artist has a different approach to it. In this children's book, the artist has used separate colours: red, orange, yellow, and so on. But in a real rainbow, you can't see any sharp divisions. There doesn't appear to be a clear boundary line dividing red from orange, for example. So how can people describe the colours they see? Albert Munsell was an American artist who worried about this problem. So he devised a system which people still use today: the Munsell colour tree. Each panel has colours all of the same hue: green, blue, violet, and so on. If we look at just one of these hues, for instance red, then you can see that the lighter colours are at the top, the darker colours are at the bottom. If we now look at just one row, you can see that the rectangle at the left-hand end is not very colourful. As we move outwards along the row, the rectangles get more colourful. The technical word is saturated. In this case, they get redder and redder. This is true at each level of lightness or brightness, and for each separate hue. Munsell found that the human eye can distinguish between over 1 million different colours. This model shows about 300 of them. In this display, there are nearly 600 different colours, but none of them are very dark or very highly saturated. Can you guess why? They're colours for painting walls and ceilings. Mandy's choosing cards which she hopes will contain the colour she wants. She's trying to match the greeny blue colour of the wash basin. This seems to be the best one. And it matches the greeny blue colour in the tiles. Mandy's hoping to paint the bathroom walls the same colour as the basin.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Can I have 5 litres of this one, please?
You want in vinyl silk or vinyl matte?
Vinyl silk, please.
Okay.
Mandy has chosen a colour which these paint manufacturers call Lugano. This index tells the assistant that he will need to start with a base of a previously measured quantity of, in this case, white paint, and add to that small amounts of 2 separate, very strong colours, called tinters. These are coded as D and E. The card shows how much of each is needed to make the correct colour in this particular quantity. The paint manufacturers have found that they only need 12 tinters altogether. Each tinter is made from pure chemicals and controlled so that it always comes out the same colour. This is the tinter coded as D. See if you can guess what colour the second tinter will be to make the greeny blue colour Mandy needs. But behind this technology lies some fundamental scientific work. The machine in the foreground is called a colorimeter. It measures colours, but first it has to classify them. When we look at something, what we actually see is the light reflected from the object into our eyes, or into this machine. Inside the machine is a set of filters. The light reflected from the card underneath passes through each filter in turn. Each filter is designed to let through a different section of the spectrum, a different range of all the possible hues. White light, a mixture of hues, shines onto each card. The card absorbs some of the hues and reflects the others, which we see as yellow, up into the machine. These indicators show which particular filter is receiving the light reflected from the card. Another display shows what percentage of the light is getting through each filter. This particular card doesn't reflect much light from the blue end of the range, but as we get nearer the red end, the percentages reach a maximum. The computer is programmed to print these out, and another computer program converts the percentages of pure colour into the correct amounts of tinter needed to create, very accurately, the colour of paint you want.
Is this okay?
Yeah, it's lovely, thank you.
To identify this bird, you don't need to know where its colours come on the Munsell scale. You might use a book, such as this, and answer questions about its size, its behaviour, and so on. Eventually, you find it's called a, well, the Russians call it Herundorustica. The Arabs call it Herundorustica. The Japanese say Herundorustica. And in Poland, you've guessed it. The language and the methods of science are international. The idea of systematic classification is central to all branches of science. The scientist classifying galaxies, the scientist classifying rocks, the scientist classifying plants, or the scientist classifying...
And your age last birthday?
43.
43.
people.
And are you in paid employment at the moment?
Yes, yes.
Is that full-time or part-time?
Full-time.
Full-time. And the head of the household, is the head of the household in full-time occupation?
I'm head of household, so yes.
Yeah. So are you employed or self-employed?
I'm employed.